The sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the worn oak table where Deborah sat, cradling a chipped coffee mug. Each sip tasted bitter, much like the memories that haunted her. It was her 37th birthday, a day she had once anticipated with excitement but had learned to dread. Today she felt invisible, her worth diminished in the eyes of those who should have cherished her. As she glanced at the photos lining the wall, smiling faces of her younger self with her father, then with Brian on their wedding day, she felt a twinge of pain. Her father had always been her biggest supporter, instilling in her the belief that education was the key to independence. After his death, the walls of their modest home seemed to close in on her, and the weight of his absence had driven her into the arms of a man who had promised her the world, but had left her feeling less than. Brian had been charming, a breath of fresh air during their courtship, and he had painted a picture of a bright future together. Yet, as she poured herself another cup, she realized how the canvas had darkened over the years. He had become increasingly critical, his dismissive remarks eroding her self-esteem like water against stone. Each derisive comment had chipped away at the woman she once was, leaving behind a fragile shell. "Mom, can you hurry up? We're going to be late." Zoe's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp and impatient. At 15, their daughter had become a mirror reflecting Brian's disdain. Zoe had long ago chosen sides, and in her eyes, Deborah was the unworthy parent, the failure who couldn't provide the lifestyle they deserved. "Just a minute," Deborah called back, a tremor in her voice. Today was meant to be different. She had vowed to reclaim her strength, to stop living in the shadow of her husband's and daughter's scorn. But as the door slammed behind Zoe, Deborah felt a wave of despair wash over her. What had she done to deserve this? She had sacrificed her dreams for Brian's education, worked tirelessly while he built his career, only to find herself alone and disrespected. Later that evening, as Deborah returned home from another grueling shift at the diner, she was greeted by the sight of Brian and Zoe in the living room. The laughter they shared stung her heart. She walked in, hoping to connect, to find solace in their presence, but the atmosphere shifted. Brian's face twisted into an expression of condescension as he turned to her. "Happy birthday, Deb. I hope you didn't buy yourself something stupid," he remarked, laughter bubbling in Zoe's throat. The humiliation settled over her like a heavy cloak, but she held her head high. "I don't need your approval, Brian," she replied, her voice steady. But deep down, doubt gnawed at her, fueling the inner battle that had waged for years. That night, as she lay in bed, the silence echoed louder than the arguments that had punctuated their marriage. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was at a crossroads, and the weight of her discontent was becoming unbearable. Could she truly reclaim her life? Could she rise above the ashes of her shattered marriage and broken dreams? Little did she know, this birthday would mark the beginning of a journey toward independence, one that would test her resolve and redefine her existence. Days turned into weeks, and Deborah found herself buried in work and solitude. Each morning she awoke with a sense of determination, her heart pounding with the promise of change. The drive to attend college had flickered to life, reigniting her passion for learning that had dimmed after her father's passing. She enrolled in evening classes, pouring herself into her studies and rediscovering the joy of knowledge. However, life had its own plans. One evening, as she returned from class, she found Brian sitting at the dining table, a stack of papers before him. His face was a mask of irritation, and her heart sank. "Deborah, you need to stop this nonsense. We can't afford you to be wasting time and money on a degree," he snapped, his voice laced with disdain. "I'm not wasting time, Brian. I'm building a future," she replied, the fire in her chest igniting. Brian's laughter echoed like a mocking chorus, but she held her ground. "You think this degree will make a difference? You're nothing without me. You'll never succeed." The hurtful words struck her deeply, but they also lit a spark within her. Deborah realized that this was no longer about proving him wrong, it was about reclaiming her life. That night, she poured her heart into her studies, devouring textbooks and writing papers with a fervor she hadn't felt in years. She began to see glimpses of the woman she had lost, the one her father had believed in. As she juggled work and classes, the emotional stakes rose. Each passing day became a struggle between the new life she was forging and the relentless pull of her past. She began to assert herself more, refusing to be belittled by Brian or Zoe. She set boundaries, no longer allowing them to dictate her worth. However, the transformation came at a cost. The distance between Deborah and her daughter widened. Zoe, now entrenched in teenage rebellion, saw her mother as an obstacle rather than a role model. The two fought frequently, their arguments laced with hurtful accusations and betrayal. Deborah longed for connection, but each clash deepened the chasm between them. Then came the day that would forever alter the course of her life. As she prepared for a crucial exam, her phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Brian, asking to meet. Reluctantly, she agreed, steeling herself for the inevitable confrontation. In the cafe where they met, Brian exuded confidence, wearing a smirk that made her skin crawl. "I just wanted to talk about the divorce," he began, nonchalantly stirring his coffee. "I've decided to finalize things. You'll get what you deserve and I'll get on with my life." The words hit her like a punch. "You can't just make decisions for me, Brian. This is my life too," she countered, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Oh, but you've been so busy with your dreams, haven't you? I can't believe I wasted my time trying to help you. You've turned into someone I don't even recognize," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. With those words, the final threads of their relationship unraveled. Deborah stood, fury and sadness swirling within her. "I'm done being the woman you want me to be. I'm reclaiming my life." And with that declaration, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, as if she had shed a layer of skin that had suffocated her for far too long. In the months that followed, Deborah dedicated herself to her studies, determined to excel. She found solace in her classes, immersing herself in learning and making connections with classmates who inspired her. Each day she transformed a little more, shedding the remnants of her past like autumn leaves falling from a tree. But the journey was not without its challenges. One evening, as she returned home from a late class, Deborah was greeted by Zoe, her arms crossed defiantly. "Why can't you just be normal, Mom? You're embarrassing me," Zoe exclaimed, her voice tinged with teenage angst. Deborah felt the sting of rejection but remained calm. "I'm trying to build a future for both of us, Zoe. Can't you see that?" "No, you just care about yourself," Zoe spat back, the words cutting deep. With each argument, Deborah's heart ached. She realized that while she was growing stronger, Zoe was spiraling deeper into resentment. The distance between them felt insurmountable. Yet Deborah refused to give up. She reached out, trying to bridge the gap, but Zoe only pushed her away. Then came a pivotal moment during a family gathering, where Brian and Zoe displayed a united front, their laughter echoing through the house. Deborah felt like an intruder in her own life. It was then that she overheard a conversation that would change everything. "I can't believe Mom thinks she's better than us now. She's just a loser pretending to be successful," Zoe scoffed, and Brian's laughter rang out, full of contempt. Deborah's heart sank. In that moment, she realized she had to confront her past and stand firm in her independence. Weeks later, in a twist of fate, Deborah's hard work paid off. She received an offer for an internship at a prominent firm, a chance to prove herself in the industry she had dreamed of joining. The news filled her with hope, a glimmer of light breaking through the fog of doubt that had clouded her life. But as she prepared to embrace this opportunity, Brian and Zoe's resentment threatened to pull her back into the darkness. Their attempts to undermine her newfound confidence were relentless, yet Deborah stood firm. She was no longer the woman who had bent under their scrutiny. Then came the day of reckoning. During an office event, Deborah found herself face to face with Brian, who had come to network with his own clients. The shock of their meeting ignited a fire in her heart. "Deborah," he greeted, his voice dripping with condescension, "I didn't expect to see you here. Still pretending to be someone important?" With a steady voice, she replied, "I'm not pretending, Brian. I've worked for this, and I won't let anyone take it away." The confrontation marked the turning point in her life. She had reclaimed her voice, her dignity, and her place in the world. In the weeks that followed, she distanced herself from the toxic hold of her past, creating a life defined by resilience and strength. Deborah's ascent within her new firm was swift. She quickly garnered respect from colleagues and clients alike, her work ethic and dedication leaving an indelible mark. The thrill of making a difference, of creating a life she'd once thought impossible, filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. The path had not been easy, but for the first time in years she felt whole. However, the past continued to haunt her. Brian's career had stagnated, and Zoe's life had taken a downward spiral. The rebellious teenage defiance had evolved into a restless adulthood. Zoe was now 22, struggling to find her footing and navigating a world she wasn't prepared for. The rift between mother and daughter had deepened, and Deborah had resigned herself to watching from afar, heart heavy with unspoken love. One rainy evening, As Deborah was preparing for an important presentation, a knock echoed through her apartment. She opened the door to find Zoe, drenched and looking far from the confident young woman she once knew. Her makeup was smeared, her face pale, and her eyes, usually filled with youthful arrogance, were hollow. "Mom, can I come in?" Zoe's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the rain. Deborah nodded, stepping aside. This was the daughter she'd missed, the girl who, despite the harsh words and misunderstandings, was still her flesh and blood. Zoe sank onto the couch, her shoulders hunched in a defeated posture. Silence filled the room, heavy with unspoken words, until Zoe finally spoke. I don't know what I'm doing with my life, Mom," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Everything I thought I wanted, none of it makes sense anymore." For a moment, Deborah's heart broke all over again. She saw herself in Zoe, the same confusion, the same pain, the same lost dreams. But now she had the wisdom to offer that she gained through her own struggles. "Zoe, I know how you feel," Deborah said gently, her voice laced with compassion. "Sometimes life doesn't go the way we planned, but that doesn't mean we can't find a new path. It's never too late." Zoe looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I was so awful to you, Mom. I judged you because I thought you'd never become anything. But I was wrong. You're everything I want to be now. I'm so sorry." Deborah's breath caught. The apology she had yearned for, the word she had given up hope of ever hearing, had finally come. A rush of emotion filled her chest, and she moved to sit beside her daughter, placing a hand on Zoe's shoulder. "I forgive you, Zoe," she whispered. "But more importantly, I want you to forgive yourself. You have so much potential, so much life ahead of you, and I'll be here for you every step of the way, if you let me." In that moment, a bond was forged anew, stronger and deeper than before. The years of estrangement, the resentment, the hurt all melted away. They spent hours talking, sharing fears, dreams, and regrets, finding in each other the strength to move forward. The following weeks brought a renewed sense of purpose to Deborah's life. With Zoe by her side, she poured herself into her career, using her newfound influence to mentor young women who, like her, had been told they were less, that they couldn't achieve greatness. She found joy in lifting others, giving them the support she had once needed. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, Deborah received news that stunned her. Brian had reached out, requesting a meeting. Curiosity mingled with caution, and after careful consideration, she agreed to meet him at a cafe near her office. When he walked in, he looked different, older, tired, his confidence dimmed. Gone was the man who had belittled her, replaced by someone who seemed lost. "Deborah," he began, his voice subdued. "Thank you for meeting with me." She nodded, sensing that he was about to share something significant. "I wanted to say that I was wrong," he said, his gaze fixed on the table. "All those years I didn't see what you were capable of. I held you back, treated you like you were less than you are. I was so focused on my own success that I forgot what it meant to support you. And now, well, I've paid the price for it." Deborah listened, a calm strength emanating from her. She no longer needed his validation or his apology, but the words brought a sense of closure. For so long she had sought recognition from others, yet now she found it within herself. "I appreciate that, Brian," she replied, her voice gentle yet firm. "But I've moved on. I've created a life I'm proud of, a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. I hope you find peace too." The conversation marked the end of an era, a final goodbye to a life that no longer held power over her. Deborah walked away with her head held high, feeling a liberation she hadn't known was possible. So if you love this story, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and comment below. Your interaction helps us grow.